cold. Yeah, it is freezing outside. Yeah, be careful too. The brother man almost slipped coming here, and now I'm walking like an old man because I want to make sure that I'm here next Friday. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I'm here with my co-host. I wouldn't even say guest anymore because he's been here, and he's going to be right near us. And singer, he's here from GBH, and we're going to talk about numerous things this morning. Good morning, man. Good to see you again. Good morning.
I want to first of all say to everybody in the community who's listening, one, be very careful. It is icy outside.
Yes.
And two, Pastor Wall and Pastor Hobbs are outside this morning, salting down the sidewalk around this church. They're out there doing the whole block around the corner, and I'm just like, I have enormous respect for, the country pastor who's doing
That's right.
He's probably out milking the cows later on. Enormous respect and shout out to Pastor Wall for keeping the lights on here and keeping the salt on the sidewalks, and thank you for that.
Yeah, and I thank you too, but I wanted to help you, but
I wanted to also, but I was like, but I'm dressed in my radio clothes. I can't get
So what do you got for us today, man?
Oh, well, it's good to see you. You and I have been talking before about the research that Nika was doing as part of she was chairing this commission on structural racism in correctional facilities, and that report came out in December.
Former state rep Nika Elugado.
Yeah,
yep.
Sorry, I should have.
Yeah, that's okay.
Actually, the report came out in January, in early January, and I don't think I've been back to talk to you since then. But I think it's worth definitely going back to revisit and not to forget about it. It was a very detailed report, 71 pages, and the takeaway that is at the center of it, and they found, as you mentioned, structural racism and a bunch of things. But there's a sentence in here. This is from our coverage that's on our website at gbh.org. Here I am promoting my work. Actually, my colleague Chris Burrell. Inmates of color told commissioners about unequal access to medical and mental health care, waiting longer for job placement than their white counterparts. They were routinely given lower-paying janitorial work instead of the more desirable and higher-paying jobs in metalwork and dog training. It's like in every single aspect of the prison experience, they were being put to the back of the line, and their white colleagues, fellow prisoners, were getting advantageous treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no other correlating factor other than race as to why this was happening. And it ends up, and the thing about it, we've talked some about this, that we're doing, at GBH News, we're doing a pretty deep dive into returning citizens. This whole year, we're spending a lot of time talking about and writing stories about returning citizens and some of the issues. This is a whole thing. This is my new color of public money. This is my new campaign. We're going to be doing this for a while.
It's interesting you mentioned, I started to tell you this before we came on, about a brother I spoke to this morning who's the chair of the reentry committee. Okay, cool. So that's good. That's who you need to talk to.
That's who I need to talk to.
Yeah, he's good too.
Well, and the thing about it, and the reason I bring that up is that when you start asking questions about reentry,
mm-hmm.
and where people succeed and where people fail, and where there's if you believe in the word correction, in the name of the department, the theory is that the whole idea is to correct behavior and to set people on a path where they can succeed after they've done their time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are behind the wall and you're getting classified in a way through your sentencing that keeps you out of programming, if you're getting the lower choice jobs, if you're getting less training in prison than your white neighbor down the cell block, we are setting these, mostly men, we're setting them up to fail when they return.
Right. Mostly black men.
Mostly black men, black and Latino.
Latino,
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to sort of look back through the process and say, well, is this person succeeding when we send them home?
Right.
Well, what did we do during the time they were in our care,
Right.
to help them succeed. And the report is really it's a very dense read. I'm warning you, it's not like a sort of like a page turner, have a cup of coffee.
Right.
But it is striking how you see repeated over and over and over again that basically, if you are a black man in prison and there is a white man in the cell next to you, there's a really good chance that the white man in the cell next to you is getting better opportunities than the black man.
Wow. You know, it's interesting you mention this because I've actually visited inmates, some family members, and the treatment you get as a visitor is not cool. It's so unwelcoming. You feel as if you don't even want to go in there.
And it's already a difficult experience, so why shouldn't they make it easier for you?
Right, exactly.
Because again, keeping those community ties, having those relationships outside the wall with family is very important for your well-being of the person who's incarcerated.
Right.
That's a really interesting point, Ron. I've never really given thought to that.
Mm-hmm. And I used to go into the prisons. It was in the 90s. It may have been like the early 2000s. I used to meet with a group of inmates, Arnie King, and they had a group called, I believe it was Coming Together. And I remember my first experience going in there, and they do this exercise where you close your eyes and meditate, and then they go around and introduce themselves and say how much time they were in there for. So I'm in the room. One guy says, I'm in here for 10 years, a young cat, right? This other guy, I'm in here for life. I'm in here for 30 years. And I'm sitting in there in the room with my colleague, just like, whoa. And the chill that you get. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was a little nervous because when I would go through the gate, it was just like, oh man.
Is that going to open again? Yeah.
Yeah. Not only get open again, but the guns,
Oh, yeah.
And I actually remember going up to, I can't remember I don't want to say anything incorrect. One of the prisons with Governor Deval Patrick, and the conditions, to see a person in a cell no bigger than probably that square foot over there, just locked up. And they were like, let me out, man, let me. And it's so inhumane.
Yeah, I did a reporting trip to, it's a long story, but the short version is that there was a supermax prison in Ohio that was built, and then, of course, they had all these empty beds, and so the state just started sending people there because they paid for the prison, they paid for the beds, so they were sending people to supermax,
right,
who weren't really supermax eligible. They hadn't committed a crime of that kind of seriousness, and so the prisoners actually filed suit, and the judge decided, out of a sense of justice, to have the opening of the hearing of the trial in the prison. So we all went to the supermax prison, and you're in this central cell block,
right,
and we're on the floor of the cell block where they normally would have the lunch tables or whatever out there, and the cells are in tiers around this. You feel like you're in an arena, and in each cell is one guy behind a closed door with this food slot open, and they're in a chair, and their eyes are looking out through the food slot,
right,
so they can watch this trial go on. And it was just, I've got a sketch of it that I did when I got home, because it was just, that image has stayed with me, is these people they're treated like animals.
Yeah.
And they're not animals, they're human beings, and
it's depressing. And even when they come out, one of the issues that the brother I was talking to earlier this morning about is the housing.
It's terrible.
It's no halfway house, no transition back into mainstream of society. And what happens is that if you don't have housing, you end up going back either to addiction or whatever to survive. And so are we really having a system that rehabilitates or, keep you in oppressed?
Well, this is the question. And so, and I will tell, you and your listeners, we are very serious. We have a whiteboard up on office where we're just keeping lists of ideas and things and topics that we need to be writing about in about returning citizens. And we are welcoming anyone's voice. We are talking to the community as much as possible. We haven't written a word.
Right.
For 6 months we've been doing this because we just want to hear from people. So people know where to find me. You know, Paul, I'll use my first name for the first time on this show, Paul_Singer at WGBH.org. We want to hear your stories, your voices, your suggestions, your ideas. If you want to participate in our series of stories about returning citizens, we want to have you in. That is an open invitation, and I welcome it because there are people in the community who know this issue better than I do, and it is my job to listen before we start telling stories.
Yeah, we have a caller on the line. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Hey, good morning, Ron, and good morning to your guest on this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Does his voice sound familiar to you?
It does. It sounds like mine.
Sounds a little like yours, huh?
Pastor Dickinson. Bishop.
Bishop, how are you?
Yeah. Hey, the prison you was making reference to, there was actually two in that visit with Governor Deval Patrick, was Old Colony.
Okay, we were together, right?
I was there.
Right, that's right. Thank you. You're all right.
And it was also Norfolk.
Norfolk.
And
Thank you.
Let me tell you this: they did not want him to visit Old Colony at the time. They just wanted him to visit Norfolk. Norfolk was known for having more programs and whatnot, and they were prepared to receive him. And I put a call into him, said, "No, you need to visit OCC." And so he visited there, and that's where he heard directly from the inmates the things that was going on. He was able to get a feel of what their true experiences were at the time.
Right.
And so some of the things that are being done in the prison system is very deliberate, and I have not read the full report yet, but I know that a lot of the things that have taken place, I know firsthand, those things are true, because I worked as a a reentry consultant for about 6+ years, and I know firsthand how things are going on behind the wall.
Are you still doing some of that work, Bishop?
Yes, I do it just my own. I don't go as much since the pandemic kind of slowed us down.
Yeah,
but
right.
I'll be getting back to my regular schedule, and when I go now, speak, and they try to make clergy become volunteers because they can control them as volunteers, meaning that as a volunteer you're limited to certain visits, you're limited to do certain things, and I think that it's important for us to allow the clergy in there to bring a sense of hope and uplifting in regards to the inmates. But sometimes they don't want the inmates to be uplifted. And as Ron said, when you go in there, they treat the visitors with such disdain until it turns people off and turn them away from visiting their loved ones.
And I got a witness. That's so good, because I'm starting to get everything's starting to come back to me. Do you remember the brother who was behind the wall in that little room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just so disheartening. And I did hear some of the smart remarks about the governor, and when we were there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Bishop, I'm going to take this opportunity to tell you that I'm going to be in your inbox, and I'm going to drop you a note after we get out of here, because I'd love to sit down and just have you tell us a little bit about what you know, what you've seen, what we should be on the lookout for, what kind of people we should be meeting and talking to. It sounds like you've got some real wisdom to share, and I'm grateful for that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you definitely do. What about Elder Hutchison? Is he still doing the apprenticeship programs and everything?
Yes. The apprenticeship program is still going on at Greater Love. It's the Future Hope Apprenticeship Program.
That's
Director is Pastor Emmanuel Hutchison, and that's been going on for several years, helping men and women who are coming out of incarceration and are in a transitional phase in their lives to learn carpentry, drywall, some of those things, that they can get an OSHA certificate, go to a construction site and actually, work. And so that's been positive. And
what church was that you said?
Greater Love.
Greater Love Tabernacle, 101 Nightingale Street in Dorchester.
I can get you the information.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and there are many returning citizens who are doing positive things out here. And while they were incarcerated, they had to go through so much because they were helping their fellow inmates to fight their cases and to understand the law better, things like that. And it's just unfortunate that the system is not broken. It's very deliberate, and it's put together in a way that will keep people down, and black men in particular.
And this is part of the thing, Bishop, that we want to talk about in our series. This is sort of a non-traditional approach for us in journalism, that we do want to write some stories about things that the state programs are doing that are not working or that are barriers to people succeeding. But we also want to spend a lot of time focusing on the successes, on the stories of people who have done their time, have served their punishment, and who are back in the communities and who are giving back, and they're succeeding. And we want to talk to them about what has worked, because I think that it is, in traditional journalism circles, we'll say like, "Wow, this program stinks," and blah blah blah, and they did a bad job, and then we just leave it there.
Right. And
I don't think that's as helpful. I think some of that is true. We need to focus on the programs that aren't working, but we also need to have some conversation about there are people in the communities who are making a difference, who are making it work, who have taken some paths that can be instructive, and we really want to focus on those as well.
Right, and some of the prisons like Norfolk that have restorative justice programs. Those programs are really helping inmates to deal with what they did while they were out among their community, and how they are connecting with people, asking for forgiveness. And we did a whole series of videos years ago when I was working with the inmates in regards to a video project called Behind the Wall.
Right, I remember that.
Darryl Jones. Who was incarcerated, and he was set free. A man that after over 30 years of incarceration, they found that he wasn't guilty. And Darren Howell, they helped to produce this project, and we dealt with forgiveness, we dealt with bullying, and some other subjects. And so these videos can be shared throughout schools and community centers and whatnot, and so those are positive things that have come out of the community, such as people like myself and Gloria Fox and others who went into the prison to help uplift these men and women, and in particular the men who had such a hard time reconnecting with some of the people in the community because of their past transgression.
Thank you, Bishop. And you have a big event coming up tomorrow, I believe? Or is it?
No, it's not a big event. It's not a big event.
It's a big issue.
It is now. It just got announced on Boston Black News.
It's mental health. This is part 2 of our series. Our church has a health and wellness ministry, and this is part 2 of a series that deals with mental health for men. And it takes place tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it'll be free lunch served, and we try our best to deal with real issues, real problems. And,
That's right.
And brothers were sharing last time and just pouring out their heart and being an inspiration and encouragement to one another. So we have to really be considerate of our mental health, know our limitations, and know the things that are before us, and understand the stresses that are brought on because of institutionalized racism and hindrances within a society that don't embrace us and don't seem to give us the same level playing field.
And Bishop, we had a group of young people who were had been involved in the juvenile justice system, and they came to GBH just to visit, and we had a lovely conversation with them, and I showed them our whiteboard about the issues we were talking about, and this young woman said something very powerful to me. She said, you need to put on your whiteboard the mask, And I said, what's the mask? And she said, well, you know, when you've been in the justice system, you have to develop a kind of a mask that you wear, that you're okay, that you're tough, that you can fight off anybody you need to, that you don't have to, you never admit a weakness when you are behind the wall.
Right.
And then you come out from behind the wall and you're back in community, and you still have that mask where you're still telling people, I'm tough, I don't need any help, I don't need anything, I'm independent, I'm strong. And she said the most important thing is to let go of the mask, to ask for help, to recognize your own struggles and to grapple with them, and to recognize vulnerability and accept it and to work on it. And I think what you're saying is fits exactly in that, is that it's very hard for us to admit that we have weakness, that we have struggle. And it is very important to ask for help, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. And so,
That's right.
and so I applaud you for that, and I admire that, and I wish you luck with that.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. God bless.
Yep, God bless
Hey,
you
thank
too.
you, Ron Bell. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, man. We have another caller on the line. Boston Black News, you're live.
Yes, good morning. This is T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy.
Hey, good to meet you, T. Michael. How are you?
I'm in the fight.
Okay.
So I wanted to throw the grenade in the room right now.
Okay. Should I
Whoa.
watch my
Yeah,
back?
right, exactly. I know.
Yeah, yo.
You brothers are safe. You know you are with me.
Okay. Thank you so much.
But I really have to put this out there. Here we are, once again, over $18 billion in new construction in Boston. 4 to 6 times that in restoration work. The old buildings that need attention. The President of the United States, Joe Biden himself, talked about the hundreds of construction workers are needed. You look around the city, there's a serious boom, right?
Right.
Yep.
Look at the folks that's working on the job, not of the community, don't look like the community, but they need the workers. Then you have the governor, you have the mayor, you have the street violence, you have folks coming in and out of the system, the recidivism. And here the People's Academy, after 15 years, not 15 days, weeks, or months, once again, we're saying there's a lot of ARPA money, all kinds of funds. There's linkage money.
Mm-hmm.
Sit with us. Let us show them a training piece, manufacturing piece, job creation, shovel ready.
Right. And
No conversations. You meet folks, and they refer you to their administration. At the end of the day, the governor and the mayor has the last voice. Period.
Right.
And T. Michael, let me interrupt you for 10 seconds here and just say that, because just in case the listeners are unfamiliar with your project, you run a training program in metalwork that is a tremendous program for. Are you focusing mostly on returning citizens, or are you focusing just on in general on youth who've had difficulties in the area?
The high percentage of the individuals that we've been catering to have been returning citizens. Mm-hmm. We also take other individuals. Mm-hmm. But the point is that we have an opportunity right now. Let me bring you up to speed. On Morrissey Boulevard, the Beasley building next to Star Market, mm-hmm. Councilor Frank Baker and I got an opportunity come March, April. The owner of that building said, I'll give you guys a couple years for free to do a training component in there to train trainers. We need folks to step up right now and help us to train those same individuals that they're making $40, $60, $80 an hour once they embrace this trade.
And what do you need? Like, what when you say you need people to step up, what is it you need? As it happens, by the way.
We need help. Mm-hmm. We need help with operational funds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's money.
You have to have tools. You have to have stock that they can work on. In other words, if a person is going for their dentist license, they have to have equipment, right, and tools and stuff to work on. They're not just going to stick them and say, you're a dentist. So we need these supplies. We need these things in order to train these individuals.
Got it.
Why not work with us? At least sit with us and have a conversation and see if it's practical or not.
What's the status of the blueprint you showed me?
Yeah, I had the same question.
You had the same one, right?
Yeah.
Quincy and Warren, let me quick touch on it. The land is designated to us. However, there are forces within D&D that are trying to say it's not a good fit. We went through a community process.
Wow.
The land was designated to the program after we went through the whole process. Instead of the state, the city, and the elected body speak up and help us to build this facility to get those same individuals, but provide them with housing, a place to learn a sustainable historic trade. Have you heard one elected official speak up and say, here is a program in this location that could benefit your constituents? Have you heard one speak up?
I haven't. No.
Why is that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
So and let me understand. So the building is. I didn't realize this part. If I have this correct, the building would be both the training center and some housing involved as well.
Absolutely, for returning citizens.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that. That's very cool because housing, as Ron was mentioning, and as I'm sure everyone knows here that housing is a critical barrier for people trying to return.
It's one of the most important things when individuals come to us. Some of them are living in cars. Some of them are living in folks' homes, in their garage, on their couches.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're homeless. They need help.
And so you're waiting for city money or grant money to approve the building going forward?
We're waiting for all the above. The city is sitting on a ton of money as well as the state. Why not? We're watching them fund programs that I wouldn't say that is ridiculous. Come on. What about allowing these individuals a chance to learn a trade in $1 billion industry, and they need the workers?
Right.
Why not allow them that opportunity unless because they're black? Let's call it for what it is. That's the grenade in the room. Because they're black. Let's be real.
Have you talked to anyone in workforce development? Seriously.
Right, and this sounds like something that
there's a lot of running around. There's a lot of.
I know.
Yeah, it's always the go talk to that desk, go talk to that desk, go talk to that desk, right?
Produce this, show this, show. It's folks in the administration of the mayor. You're going to them and say, hey, can you show me or tell me what resources are there? I'm not going to name names. They know who they are. And they're going to return a question to me, well, tell us programs that we have funded.
Right.
I mean, you know what you're funded. I'm asking you to show us, to help us with at least information so we can apply and get these folks some help. And they're playing games because they have, is what we call, they have projects. There is projects you use with a broom, you sweep, and then you use a shovel for the heavy lifting. They don't want to do the heavy lifting. They do not care about the black and brown bodies. We need to start facing that fact. Every person that's been elected needs to be held accountable and speak up. Why aren't you helping us to help these individuals coming in and out of prison? That's why I call it black virus. Joblessness, murder, and incarceration.
Do you have a voter registration turnout component to your program?
I don't.
I'd like to talk to you about that. Okay.
And who's your council person?
In my district?
Yeah.
The same counselor that's getting us a space on Marcy Boulevard, Frank Baker.
Okay.
Right.
Who gets me a lot of help, tools, projects in District 3.
Good.
That's good to hear that.
That's good to hear. He should be serving you.
Well, we got a lot of calls coming in. T. Michael Thomas, thank you so much for sharing this with us. And hopefully one of the listeners or viewers can do something. How can people contact you?
They can go on peoplesacademyinc.org or talk to their elected officials and say, what's wrong with the People's Academy helping folks in the community? And I will say one last thing, my tagline, Great show, and I will be listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, T. Michael.
Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning, Mr. Bell. Good morning, Mr. Singer. How are you?
Who is this?
I know that the voice sounds so
big
familiar
sister.
from a
My
period.
big sister, my big brother, and my big sister calling in. Okay, y'all watching me. You know, if you look at Facebook, you wouldn't think anyone watching us, but it seemed like folks are watching. Okay, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Priscilla.
Oh, I was just calling in to say good morning and to just encourage T. Michael Thomas. He has been doing a good
For a
job.
long time.
I don't understand why he hasn't been able to get that building built, but it does seem that he is moving. If Frank Baker's helping him get this building, so it is a step in the right direction.
Okay.
But there is a plan. It has been, designated to him. So now comes the time of raising the money.
Right. And I asked him, did he have a voter registration, education, turnout component? And I'm going to talk to him because I think that's going to move things in City Hall, because we tend to have these folks speak the words of Dr. King, but they govern like Caesar. Thank you so much for calling. Caller.
I'm writing that one down.
Caller live. You're live on Boston Black News. Okay. Okay.
Bye.
Priscilla?
Yeah.
How's the leadership program going for your young people? How's that going?
Oh, it's great.
The Marcus
great.
Hall?
Tomorrow we have our third class, but the last class we had Dr. John Madaric.
Oh, okay.
UMass, and we had Dr. Philip True from Kansas City.
Okay.
And the youth are very encouraged, and that we have 24 students, and they're really enjoying the program. And so we're at the DeWitt Center every other Saturday from 10 to 2, I'm sorry. And tomorrow we're having a Black History program. And so, it's going good. I'm excited. I'm happy about what's going on. Of course, we always got to raise money, but hey, that comes with the territory.
That's right.
We're on a good foot.
That's
and
good.
So, we're going to be doing some really great things this summer, so look out for us.
Oh no.
Martha Hall Educational Institute. Our website is maheii.org. But what I wanted to say is, so you know how we have the Black Local Organizing Committee, right?
Right.
Well, last night we usually have our meetings every Thursday. But last night we did something different. We had a healing service with Courtney Gray.
Okay.
And some other people, Lorna Herron from Age Strong Commission. And it was really good. It was really powerful because we have to. This violence is just really, really, really out of control. And so, what happened with the young boy Tyler's grandmother who passed away. They don't really. There's different stories going around, but I grew up with her. Our families were close in Orchard Park.
Sorry.
It was really hurt. Hurt. Because we are all traumatized, this community, especially the Black and brown community. Well, every time you turn around, someone's getting shot, someone's dying, and they're our babies. And I'm just honestly tired of our babies dying.
Well,
and I really don't understand the mayor's agenda around this violence. I just don't understand it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Bishop Dickerson was on the phone earlier, and I made sure that he announced the event he has for Black males, and particularly Black and Latino males, he said males, but I'm saying Black, to deal with their trauma, 16 years and older. And sometimes as clergy, community leaders, and so forth, that we don't acknowledge our trauma. Seeing
right.
that, when I ran the Missional Community Centers, I remember burying about 12 to 15 young people, going to their funerals and then speaking at their funerals and comforting their families. And that takes a toll on you. And for
It
you to
does.
say what Courtney, who's been doing this for years, as far
Yeah.
as the trauma team and his experience dealing with it, that is so important for us to acknowledge that piece, because sometimes
Yeah.
what we do, we'll have a candlelight vigil, a prayer vigil, then we have another prayer vigil, and then we have a press conference, and then we have all this trauma, and then we don't
Yeah.
deal with it, and then all of a sudden folks end up with heart attacks like yours truly. Thank you so much.
But I also want to mention that we spend a lot of time talking about mental health and trauma and suffering and healing and all these things, and those are important, and I'm not trying to belittle that, but I also want to underscore that what Priscilla is doing with the Marcus Hall Academy is you are empowering young people with knowledge, with skill sets, with the ability to change and understanding how the rules work so they can make change. That is how you combat trauma, is that you give young people hope, tools, skill sets, and empowerment. And that, I think, is the kind of real solution that is a beautiful thing.
It sure is, and at that age, because it's missing in our schools. You know,
Right.
At 9:00, Zakia Laki is coming in, and she has this book that explains the electoral process for children, and I read it yesterday.
Really?
It's so good.
I wanna see it.
You're going to see it. You're going to be here.
I guess so.
Yeah, it's so good. And I told her, you know what? Tomorrow's broadcast, I want you to just read that, because people don't understand. We talk about our young people not understanding the electoral process, but adults don't.
Right.
You know, they
That's
don't know
right.
the difference from a state rep,
Yep.
a
Yep.
state senator, or a U.S. senator. They don't know the difference from. They don't know what line items are in the state house. People don't know. You know, they call folks like us, and we actually need to teach them, because we know they don't know. So we need to pass that information on. What you're doing is so important, getting them at a younger age, and so that they'll be prepared. And then City Hall, the State House, and Congress and so forth will pay attention to our communities.
Indeed.
Right.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Priscilla.
All right. Talk to you all later. Have a blessed day.
Yep. 617-282-0685. We're here at Boston Black News in Codman Square, and we are talking about numerous issues with Singer from GBH. And man, this is all interconnected.
Yeah.
You know, the trauma piece, the lack of jobs, behind the wall.
Yep.
It's like,
Well, and this is one of the things I found really interesting, and I'm coming to some of this work new. This is not what I did for a living 5 years ago.
Right.
And I'm embarrassed about my own ignorance sometimes, but I'm trying to listen and learn. But when you have conversations about, for instance, reparations, which is kicking around now, City Hall, you start to have these conversations about, well, where does it start? Like, where does the stealing start? When did we start stealing from black people? Was it 400 years ago? Was it after that? Was it during slavery? Was it during Jim Crow? Was it during when we were redlining neighborhoods? Was it when we started to make decisions to intentionally segregate public housing? Was it when we were preventing black people from getting mortgages so they could own homes? Was it when we started to allow housing to discriminate against black people and to say that, to write into a deed that a black person couldn't live here? Where does it end? It's almost an endless line, and you start to see the end of slavery was the end of one institution, but it was not the end of enslavement. And when you watch the rest of history fold out, and again, when we've been doing this work for years, as T. Michael was mentioning, when there aren't black workers on construction sites, when there's billions of dollars being spent, isn't that the equivalent of enslavement? We are prohibiting people from rising up and having a family and having buying their own home. When the person behind the wall is getting an unfair, unequal treatment and unequal opportunities, isn't that more enslavement? You have to step back and recognize that it didn't end in 1865.
Right.
And so much of the land that we walk on in Boston is tainted with both the blood of enslaved people 300 years ago, but the blood of supposedly free people today.
Right.
And you can see it everywhere once you start looking for it.
Yeah. You don't even have to look for it.
Yeah.
Because you're living it.
Yeah.
Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning. I have a question for both of y'all.
Sure.
And my question, yes, I know we have a new governor, and we have a man that's been she's still in her first term. Mm-hmm. But my question is, how is both the governor and mayor going to help black people to make Boston, as the mayor put it, as the number one city in the country, and as the governor put it, as the number one state in the country, so that way we as black people can have a piece of the American dream, huh?
Right. I mean, I think that's a really important question. Now, the governor, it's a little harder to tell, obviously, because she just started, her agenda is still kind of taking shape. But I think the question is the right question. I will say, for what it's worth, in the mayor's case, the mayor has taken some steps that I think indicate a commitment. And when I say that, I mean she hired Shagun Idoe from the BECMA, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, who was an advocate in his previous job for the growth of black businesses. She has hired him and put him in charge of economic development, and he has made this equity a critical feature of their economic development agenda. Now, to the caller's point, right, we will have to judge them on results.
Right.
We will have to judge them on actions, but I think we have to be at least recognizing that step alone suggests change and suggests positive change. But again, to the caller's point, I don't yet have enough evidence to tell you how that's working. I do know some things have happened, small things. And honestly, things happen in small steps. I know, for instance, they created a program to specifically set aside some city contracts so that minority-owned businesses would be the first in line to apply for those contracts, right? Small step, but it is a step. And then it was a temporary program. They got it extended, so I think now it's permanent or more or less permanent. So those are the kinds of things, and this is, the challenge, honestly, for journalism, is that we write about the big agenda items because a lot of people care about the big agenda items. We don't really write about the details and how it's playing out because it's just hard to keep track of and there's a lot going on. But I think the caller's point, and I don't mean to sort of just have a filibuster here, but the caller's point is right, is that beyond just announcing, oh, I care, oh, this is an agenda item, let us go back and see real results.
Right. Well, the other piece is, and you kind of laid it out. It's just so much, and we do acknowledge folks when they make accomplishments, have accomplishments. For instance, like Glenn Lloyd getting the contract for these Boston Public Schools, City Fresh, I believe that's the company, and that's a big step. That has never happened. So we do want to applaud Mayor Wu for that, because for so long, blacks weren't even getting any major contracts. I mean, you have the numbers in your report. What do you think they should do? Caller?
Yeah, well,
my
answer is that, well, first of all, just because man will hire a black person, like the old saying goes, and I'm paraphrasing him, black faces in high places don't look like you and I. I'm a realist, so I want to be clear about that. Second of all, when it comes to failures, especially with Mayor Wu, she needs to understand and learn that anybody can talk a big game, but if you don't have the smart people to help you get to where you need to go, especially to help black people like us, then all this is just all talk and no action. I don't care what anybody says because I heard the same old story from every politician.
Okay.
And that's right. Is that, it's, you don't want to just put somebody in that spot and say, oh, look, see, I hired a black person, I can move on, right? You want to make sure that these are people who can deliver and make sure that they do deliver. Are there any specific programs you think or any specific ideas that you want to suggest?
Well, I just think that the man needs to work with the superintendent, Mary Skipper, in making sure that the Boston Public Schools is into the 21st century, because her new deal, even though it's good economically and environmentally speaking, the curriculum has been a mess from day one ever since black people has came to this country in change, because that we still face psychological slavery, we still face physical slavery, being the prison systems, and we still face the most important psychological slavery of all, the spiritual slavery,
Right.
Nobody's not talking about those three main things.
Yeah.
Also, when it comes to housing, that's both on the federal, state, and local level, because those three entities have to work together. We read the history about redlining for the federal government.
Right.
Along with this, and the city and the state have to give in, because the federal government giving both of them billions of dollars. And if they didn't do it, then they won't get that piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And even though none of the states didn't stand on their own 2 feet and said, no, we're not going to do what the government says, even though it's wrong,
Right. Well, one of the things you had mentioned about how, elected officials say we are the first, we lead in this and we lead in that, but those that are on the bottom of the barrel, or under the barrel, do not feel it.
Right.
And I think that's what's so discouraging, because it hits us everywhere. When you see these high-rise buildings going up and folks smiling down on Boylston Street and Back Bay, and then you go to Roxbury, Dorchester, and parts of Mattapan, you see people that are homeless and, struggling. So, I think we have to be very careful when we, with our sound bites, because the sound bites are not hitting the little guy.
I also want to get back to, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but I'm sort of interested because our caller has raised this point about the schools. I know this is a very sensitive subject for you, that the mayor has rejected the plan for an elected school board. I don't have an opinion about this, in part because I come from Washington, D.C., where I saw it go both ways and I saw it fail both ways.
Right.
But I know this is something that's very important to you.
Yeah, it's very important to me because, we fight hard to get people registered to vote. We get them educated as much as we can and turn them out as much as we can, although the numbers have not reflected that. And when we say we live in a democracy, and when there's an overwhelming vote by the people, it's very disturbing and discouraging to those of us that are doing the work when it's vetoed.
And let me remind people who haven't been following this, is that the city overwhelmingly approved a resolution for an elected school board.
Right.
And that proposal came through city council, and Mayor Wu vetoed it, saying that it is not time for this kind of upheaval. That's a fair assessment.
That's a fair assessment. Yeah. And it's really too bad, because I think that when we talk about folks are apathetic, that's not apathy. It's discouragement. It's your vote does not matter if you don't see the results of you voting, So I just like to hear, and I've heard other candidates say the same thing, a hybrid school committee, some from the state. When you work for an individual, been there, done that, in an elected office, you're going to go with them. And if they appoint you to unless you have a strong personality, right? And you have a following that turns out at the polls, you're not going to go against your boss or the person that appoints you to that position. So it's interesting to see that happen.
Yeah, I just want to thank our caller for calling in and raising that point. And I think it's a fair point to remember that, education is still critical. Education is still the pillar. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's the best weapon to combat social problems. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News. Oh, okay. Well, we have 5 minutes.
Oh, we have
Okay.
5 minutes. Hey, can I take a moment of personal privilege and just say a thank you to Pastor Wall and the community here at Global Ministries. My mother passed recently, and Pastor Wall has his prayer gathering Friday nights at 7:00, and I called into that prayer gathering, and I really felt uplifted by this community, and it meant a great deal to me, and I just want to say thank you. It's funny. I have not spent a lot of my life in prayer. It's not my. It's generally not my department. But there is something about being embraced by people who are lifting you up in prayer, and you can feel it, and you can feel that you're not going through whatever you're going through by yourself. And it really mattered to me a great deal, and I'm very grateful to you, Pastor Wall, and to the church for embracing me and for lifting me up in what was an otherwise unpleasant weekend. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, our condolences, because I lost my mom a few years ago, and that's very difficult. And you're absolutely right. When you got a community that supports you through prayer, which we did not mention that as part of the hope piece. It's so important, man. And, and we appreciate you coming here, showing your support. And, it just brings more, it's good for my broadcast.
Yeah, well, that's all that matters, Oh, and tonight, by the way, at 7:30 on my broadcast on Channel 2.
Okay.
Basic Black is on tonight.
Okay.
And is doing a show about black food culture through the African diaspora, and they are focusing on a local restaurant in Dorchester, Comfort Kitchen, I think it is. And so they'll be talking about black food and black food culture and celebrating the community. And so, after prayer, Pastor Wall, at 7:30 on Channel 2, you'll be able to talk about and listen to a great show about black food culture.
That sounds good, and you get me hungry now.
Yeah, right. See, exactly.
Get some soul food up in here. But so this has been really good. We have Zakia Lockie. We had talked earlier about all the issues that are going on in our community, and she's going to be reading from this book that talks about the basics of the electoral process, government, some of the things that you think. We're not going to insult anyone. Just bear with us, because we want to teach our community how we can deal with some of these issues that are so big that we have to face every day. So God bless you. We'll be right back.